Salutations, love, peace, and hair grease. Now let's continue to talk some jazz about the Day of the Jackal, episodes 7 through 10 to conclude this series. I apologize that it took me so long to get this video uploaded, but I am in the middle of writing 2 books, and I did not realize that watching this 10 episode series was going to take as long. So, again, apologies, but let's get into it. Episode 7 begins with the Jackal asking Xena for help with the next hit. Xena is delighted to receive this request. He simply asks her to do something about Bianca and Vincent working for the London CIA. UDC security warns him to announce his plan from the home where it's safe. His partner is against it and argues that the decision will be a disaster. He needs to go to Estonia to deliver the message to the people. Meanwhile, the Jackal is held up. Let me stop right here because it's a major spoiler. Let's just say he is cooking up his plan to make his money, and he's created a situation where he receives major intel. Nuria's family probes further into her marriage, and they are all about the money. I'll say it again. Nuria is el stupido. She allows her mother and brother to convince her to steal money from her husband for the bar he was asking the Jackal to invest in. But her mother, she's the worst kind. Anyway, the Jackal is watching his greedy in-laws rob him from his secret stash behind the wall. He hardly shows any emotion as he's watching them invade his privacy, and he continues to prepare for the murder ahead of the event in Estonia. Bianca was right about him being a mimic, and he's a very good one. Unfortunately, the CIA has made progress with the drawing of what he looks like. It ties back into when that cop came to do the rounds because there was a disturbance in the Airbnb. The police officer who asked him the questions at the Airbnb recognizes him. Her recognition lights a fire below Bianca, and she and the team head out to snatch him up before they lose him, but are ambushed by hitmen, barely missing her and Vincent once they exit the building. She and Vincent survive the attack and proceed with the mission to capture the Jackal at the Airbnb now that the officer has placed his last location. Being a step ahead of everyone, the Jackal has checked out of the Airbnb because that officer got a good look at him. Bianca requests that the officers get a better likeness of him and search the Airbnb for his fingerprints. While they continue on the cat and mouse chase, the Jackal has put another plan into motion of how he's going to carry out the hit of UDC. Here's a not so favorable critique I have with his plan. It is brilliant, but it wouldn't work nowadays because cameras are installed everywhere. In every corner of every building, there is a camera set up somewhere. So I understand that this was carried out the way it did for the sake of the show, but I kind of had a hard time believing that this plan would work because someone would have caught him on a camera, especially since they had 2 days to prepare for the event. With a hitman like this on the loose, surveillance would have caught him somewhere in that building and shown that he did not leave. The other part about this scene that I did not care for was the fact that when they were in Budapest, Bianca took a piece of his clothing. And with that piece of clothing, she passed it on to the police with the dog so they could catch his scent. I don't understand why they couldn't find him in the building, being that they had the whole building swept. So that was another part of the story that I kind of didn't, get with, but just my opinion. But let's carry on. Meanwhile, as the officers comb the building, Bianca's team has figured out that the ambush hours earlier was meant to kill her. Also adding to the fact that there is a mole inside of this operation. Before UDC arrives in Estonia, Bianca meets with the head of security representing UDC and gives him the piece of the Jackal's clothing that she took when they were in Budapest so that the dog can track his scent. But they have no idea that he's already in the building. And this is another part that I kind of didn't get with because a camera would have caught him, and I don't see how the dog would have been able to catch his scent in the building. He would have been hard to find, but if those dogs are properly trained and they have his scent, it just didn't seem realistic, but let's carry on. Now we wait for Rodin's event. While security continues to search the building for the Jackal, he's in his hiding spot for 2 days, freezing and thinking about a massacre during his military days, which causes him to have some flashbacks and is obviously a trigger for him. To settle his nerves, he thinks about how he met Nuria. Now 2 days have passed, and UDC has arrived in Estonia, and his security prepares with one final walkthrough of the building. The ceremony begins, the Jackal weaves his way into position, and UDC addresses the crowd when suddenly a second shooter interrupts his plan and storms the stage with a gun. 2 shots go off, one from the stage and one from the Jackal. As the commotion continues, we get a scene of Bianca's family back in London watching all of the chaos on television. Her husband spots her and turns the channel before the children recognize that she's there. We then go back to where the police are urging for the doors to remain closed at the event, but the crowd rushes through the exit and the Jackal slips out with them. Unfortunately, the spoiler I didn't mention, so pause if you have not watched episodes 1 through 6. If you haven't listened or watched my previous episode, again, this is a spoiler warning. Here we go. Rasmus sees the Jackal leaving the hall, chases him down, and the Jackal puts him down on the street, securing that he has no loose ends upon his escape. I didn't want to mention that because that was kind of a highlight, but Rasmus is the guy who helped the Jackal when his phone dropped as he was hanging from the ceiling doing his recon work. A lot of the big highlights I don't like to share because I think you should watch the episode, so I did not mention this, so now I can because we are at this point. But Rasmus is the person who ends up being put down in the street like a dog, as if they didn't share some moments that I'm sure if you watch the episode, you will know what I'm talking about. Now let's carry on to episode 8. Xena searches for the Jackal while the board goes ballistic that UDC has not been taken out. Bianca and her team search the building and find where he was hiding, impressed of his patience to wait 2 full days in the building just to make his kill. UDC is beyond pissed that he is in danger in his own home because he doesn't trust any of his security detail at this moment. We then go back to London where Bianca's old partner gives her the report of the dead soldier she requested. She and Vincent review it to put the pieces together and figure out information is missing that the government wants to keep a secret about a mission in the Middle East. The Jackal is now missing, but we do get a glimpse of his past while he was in the army, and we get to learn a little bit more about him. The story showcases how he began his career as a hitman. He and one of his lieutenants are staking out a hit, and he has to overstep his command and not kill the wrong target. He displays his patience and waits to kill the right target against his partner's wishes. The scene also shows us that his partner does not go by protocol and his partner does not care who gets murdered. But the Jackal always wants to get the right target. When the mission is complete, the Jackal is rewarded for the good job. He and his buddy, also another soldier named Gary, are approached to kill a target for them, which goes against the rules of the military. The scene then switches back to London and the Jackal's DNA has come back. The results are inconclusive. So Bianca begs her supervisor to use her position to gain more information from the hidden file of Alexander Duggan when she learns that his file says he is deceased, but there is no body for him. Remember, Alexander Duggan is the name that one of his former military buddies just shelled out at Bianca because he wanted her out of his house. And I said she was going to use that against him. Now she's digging further into the Alexander Duggan file. We then go back to the flashback scene, and the Jackal does kill that target, accepts the money, and then is offered more money to continue killing for the enemy. And the scene ties in as Bianca's hunch has been proven to be correct, that he is indeed Alexander Duggan. Now that the dots are being connected, we go back into present day, where the drawing of the Jackal is released to the news. Nuria's brother recognizes the Jackal, but Nuria tells him he better not repeat that to anyone. And when the Jackal calls to check in on his wife, she threatens for him to come home and to end his career. We take a pause, and Bianca shows the first signs of softness when her daughter visits her and wants to come home. But Bianca makes her understand they'll be together once she figures out how to keep them safe. The scene then switches back to the Jackal's military days, and the same lieutenant who gave him the order to shoot the wrong target, but the Jackal waited it out until he got the right target, is now revealed to continuously make mistakes and go against protocol. Under his order, the team is given the order to massacre a lot of innocent people at a wedding taking place in the Middle East. He then covers their mistake by having a jet bomb the site. This act bothers the Jackal, especially being that it's not the first time this lieutenant gives the wrong order and could care less about who the victims are. One can assume that now that the Jackal is accepting money for hire to take out targets, and being that he's so disgusted by what his lieutenant has done, a new person has been reborn in the Middle East. And it can be an assumption here that this is where he just starts to not care about what he does. We go back to present day, and Bianca visits Larry in prison. He gives her a list of dead people on her watch and tells her that she is just as rotten as he is. And he's kind of telling the truth, I guess. She says she came to apologize, but he doesn't give her any grace and kills himself in front of her after listing how she used his daughter to get to his wife, used his wife to get to him, then used him to get to his brother. She then realizes all of this blood is on her hands. OC makes her and Vincent sign NDAs to read the hidden report Isabel managed to uncover. They learn that the Jackal's history in the military, all of his achievements, and the story of how his entire unit was annihilated by the Taliban has to stay under wraps. Plot twist. Remember back in episode 6 when I mentioned OC and Isabel have a meeting and I said when it comes to figuring out who the mole is, it's never who you think it is? Well, Isabel stops OC as he is leaving this meeting where he had Bianca and Vincent sign the NDAs to read this report, as the report is false. We, the viewer, then assume OC is the mole in the office. But again, you never know. The truth of the Jackal's unit is finally revealed to the viewer, which is completely opposite of what OC had drawn up to provide Bianca and Vincent. And here's what happened. The Jackal was disgusted with his unit murdering those innocent people in the village at the wedding, so he creates a ruse and stops his unit from traveling on a route, pretending that he's searching for landmines. He asks his good buddy Gary to accompany him as the Jackal has secured the vehicles that they were traveling in with bombs and blows them up with a remote phone. Gary suspects nothing, but the two of them survive, and then we head into episode 9. We begin episode 9 with Xena confronting the Jackal, UDC beefing up his security, and also asking his partner to announce the program if something were to happen to him. His partner says the board won't listen to him, in a jealous tone from what I picked up, and the suspense is so intense between these two, and I already don't trust anyone at this point, that one can imagine, with one episode remaining, his partner could also be a suspect. Also, let me add, I don't skip the intro when this show comes on because Celeste is singing the hell out of This Is Who I Am. I just thought I'd mention that. Okay, let's get back to the show. Bianca goes back to being a horrible, entitled snob with a badge, finding Captain Baldwin, who was in charge of the Jackal's unit in the Middle East, as he is now suffering in the hospital with cancer. The man asks her to leave him alone, and she stops him from calling the nurse. I know we are looking for a killer, but can her character be more unlikable? Especially after Larry pointed out the innocent lives staining on her record. But I digress. While Bianca is torturing this man in his hospital bed dying of cancer, the Jackal has made it to Croatia, doing surveillance to finish the job and carry out the hit on UDC. Isabel back in London has decided to pull the plug on the mission. Bianca oversteps as always and declares she won't stop looking for him, and then goes to search for OC, thinking that he is the one person who will support her in her decision to carry on. Unaware he is the mole that I'm guessing. Also, he's the man who gave away her home address. I'm guessing. He fits the bill at this point. When the Jackal surveillance is complete, he keeps his promise to Nuria and returns home back to Cadiz, Spain, and finds his son alone in his room, unaware that Nuria is watching them on the baby monitor. She confronts her husband for the truth after telling him he is a liar and showing him the wanted photo and pressures him to confess his crimes to her. And he does. We then go back to Bianca, who has now found OC, and he tells her to walk away from the case. Bianca, being Bianca, tries to talk her way into getting the information that she wants out of him until he yells at her and tells her to shut the F up and sends her on her way. She then visits her husband, who is still living in his ex-wife's house, by the way. Again, I don't get that part, but okay. I don't know where this dynamic would ever be normal, nor did I expect this messy element in this show, but here we are. Bianca is so used to getting her way, she tries to charm her husband to fix their marriage, but he doesn't fall for it. He even goes as far as telling her how she turns off being a mother to their daughter like a light switch and that it has to stop. Her husband doesn't fall for her charm, humbles her ego, and I must admit it was kind of good to see that she struck out twice, not being able to talk her way into getting what she wants because she did need to be humbled a little bit. Back in Cadiz, Spain, Nuria's brother shows up to the house, acting bold and erratic. Now that he knows the Jackal's secret and has seen the money, he bullies his sister about what he knows. She questions his behavior, and her suspicions are correct as Alvaro, her brother, has committed the Jackal to a meeting with the ruthless Cuban mafia boss for a business investment that he wants just to benefit himself. Nuria runs to her husband before he leaves for his final job to murder UDC and tells him of the danger her brother has brought to their doorstep. He assures her he will handle it, and he does so pronto. Gotta say, I was impressed with that scene, but you can guess what he did. But I won't tell you how he did it. The board makes one final bargain with UDC, but he refuses to listen, and we learn that the Secretary of Defense in London, who is working with Isabel, is also working with the board members who Xena is representing to kill UDC. And he lets them know that he cannot block the policy when UDC's plan is launched. The news of the Cuban boss's murder makes the news, and reading the word sniper lights a fire below Bianca. But she's too late because the Jackal is already posted up in the ocean, waiting to take out UDC when he goes for a swim. A swim his boyfriend, ding ding ding, urges him to go on. Here's where I take a moment to question the scene. A drone flies over the boat. The Jackal hides his weapon from it, but when he puts his gear back on and is ready to take out his target, a boat travels behind him and he doesn't hide the gun again. I'm not sure if that was a faux pas. If anyone can respectfully weigh in about that scene, please do so in the comment section. Anywho, the last 5 minutes of this episode had me on the edge of my seat. UDC makes his way into the water. The Jackal prepares to shoot. The boat that I mentioned that sails behind him sends waves that rocks the Jackal's boat. He steadies himself, takes out a security guard on a jet ski that's approaching him. UDC's bodyguard that swims alongside him notices that something is wrong and tries his best to secure UDC in the water, but all I can say is the Jackal does not miss. Okay, that was a lot, but we have reached episode 10. Our killer escapes the scene by boat, only to run into trouble near his home as the streets are filled with cops searching cars pertaining to the murder of the Cuban boss. Let me warn you, episode 10 has a lot of twists and turns, so pay attention carefully. The Jackal chooses chaos with the car chase, determined to make it home to Nuria, who has alerted him that Alvaro is in custody. UDC's lover announces his death to the world and postpones his launch indefinitely, going against what UDC asked him to do. The board celebrates with his announcement. Shouts out to Charles Dan, aka Tywin Lannister. And the win isn't enough, as he hints that some loose ends need to be dealt with. And I'm assuming he means Xena. Bianca returns to the office and has to be reminded the case is closed. She does what she does best and oversteps with Isabel, who then suggests she take some time off. With a bruised ego, she quits her job. Unfortunately, on her exit, the Secretary of Defense is requesting she continue working the case to kill the Jackal, and then they will deal with her, meaning she will also be killed once she's carried out what they want done. Nuria bails out her brother and cuts him out of her life while her husband races to her side when he diverts off the road to save a child chasing after a ball in the street. His car runs off the road, but he's rescued by an innocent bystander, who he pulls a gun out on and takes his car. It's a whole big scene, but like I said, it's a lot of twists and turns in this episode. Bianca then visits her husband at work and says she's chosen her family over her job and wants her husband back. He folds, and him and his daughter move back in the house. The Jackal does what he does best. He weaves himself out of situations with force, changes his disguise, burns and dumps a vehicle he's stolen, then tricks an elderly couple to drive him to the border. The wife stabs the jackal in the back. The husband bum rushes him for their lives, and they both die at his hands as he's spiraling out of control. Isabel visits Bianca at home, asking her to take her job back so she can complete the mission. She surprisingly turns it down, then annoys her family about taking the job just to carry out this last mission, once again choosing the job over them after they've just forgiven her. She and Vincent head to Spain while the jackal burns the vehicle with the elderly couple. He catches a ride on a tour bus and tells his wife that they are going on vacation by text, and Nuria knows he means for good. Here's the part where I'd like to raise a few questions. So the jackal has made it back to Spain by plane. I don't understand how that's possible when his face has been plastered over the news and his disguise was just a simple pair of glasses. I'm convinced some cameras would have caught his face on some type of recognition software. And also, how is it that a camera didn't see him drop the gun in the trash can before he approached the gates? It just seems to me that some type of technology would have captured his face, or at least that object, in today's society. But I digress. Let's finish out the episode. Xena gets a call from the corporation, but she senses something is off. She sends them on a goose chase looking for her in her hotel, and then warns the jackal that the corporation is coming after him also. Of all this, the jackal has made a friend that it seems he can trust. While investigating the Cuban mafia boss's murder, Bianca and Vincent get intel, and they use Alvaro's association with the case to track down the jackal's house. They stake out his home, and Bianca tells Vincent she is not following the orders that she was given by Isabel. She doesn't want to kill him. She wants him alive to find out who has been involved in the case that's in the agency, as well as who was the person that gave away her address. During the stakeout, Bianca and Vincent witness Nuria leaving everything behind. And we get the scene of her and the baby crying in the back of a cab, and it's the last that we see of Nuria. The jackal arrives home and he searches the house frantically for his wife and son, recognizing that she is long gone and he has no way to trace her. Bianca and Vincent break into their house, and Alvaro intrudes, drunken and determined to weasel his way back into his sister's good graces after he's witnessed the murder of the Cuban mob boss. But he ends up getting himself killed by Bianca. After Bianca kills Alvaro, she and Vincent begin to search the house for the jackal, but they can't find him in his secret room. They exchange gunfire, and the jackal ends up killing Vincent. And I finally got the answer I had been wondering all along while watching this series. Why is Bianca so hung up on this case? Why can't she let it go? Why can't she choose her family over something this dangerous? It just didn't make sense to me. And she confesses to the jackal she likes winning. He confesses, so does he, and he kills her. He speeds from the house to catch up to Nuria, but he's met by two speeding cars that we are assuming the corporation sent after him. That part I kind of didn't understand because it feels like a bit of a cheat. We don't know who hit him. It just has to be assumed that they hit him. But were they outside watching all of the commotion and the exchange of gunfire going on in the house? We have no idea. We weren't shown anything. Now we're at the end, and again, I feel cheated. Isabel has been promoted, and OC has been demoted to desk work. Isabel lies to his face about Bianca going rogue, and he knows this because Bianca sent him a text before she went to Spain explaining her orders from Isabel. But again, as I stated before, who can you trust? Because we are shown the text, but then he deletes it. We don't know who he's working for, but my assumption, he's a double agent. The jackal surprisingly doesn't die in the car crash. He meets up with Xena, who reminds him he has an unpaid debt with the corporation, but he chooses to search for his wife and son instead. There must be a season 2 coming because this left so many loose ends, and I can't imagine him going after his wife and his son and not getting the man who wanted him and Xena to be murdered after they did the job that they were begging him to complete. But again, I guess we'll find out if there's a season 2. Another loose end, UDC's launch. Is anything going to happen to the lover? Or was he working with the corporation because he didn't do what UDC asked him to do? There's another loose end about the rich. The whole thing, it was about them being crooked. and they weren't even dealt with. A main character died without finding out who the mole is. Bianca's partner was never to be seen from again except as an extra in the background. And who were the Americans OC was working for? We didn't see Bianca's family grieve. Bianca never received confirmation of who leaked her home address. Bianca mentions Gordy, the soldier that the Jackal kept alive when he blew up his unit for murdering those people at the wedding, but they never showed him in the show. And then Xena deserved revenge on Lenora for sending the hitman to her hotel to kill her. That was left open as well. Last but not least, what made the Jackal turn out to be the way he is? He didn't like the innocent people at the wedding being murdered. He swerved off the road to save a child. He spared that gentleman's life who got him to the airport in Budapest. But yet he's killed lots of innocent people, not just bad guys. What is his selection process? What turned him? Was it the first paid hit job in the Middle East? And since he seems like he can trust Xena, are they going to become allies? All of these questions are just left unanswered. In my summation, the Jackal has two villains, Bianca and her ambition, and the Jackal and the amount of blood on his hands. You can add the amount of bloods on Bianca's hands as well. Bianca was a real bitch in my opinion, and I watched for 10 episodes to learn why she was so motivated to stay on this case instead of choosing her family. Lashana Lynch deserves much recognition for this role because I like her in real life, but she made me hate her as this character, so I have to say job well done. Eddie Redmayne might become someone on my list to add as a top bad man because he delivered in this role as well. It was very complex, but he also made it believable. Overall, because of the ending, if there is a second season, I don't think I will watch it, but I will say I would give season 1 an 8 out of 10 because the action scenes were very, very good. There was some good story, but in the end, I was just left with so many questions and kind of a little bad taste in my mouth. But I think you should watch it and tell me in the comments if you've enjoyed it. This is Unlike Me. Like, share, and subscribe, and come back for more content.